Welcome to the Fortified Life Podcast, where we learn how to develop a dependency on Jesus in the marketplace. From the boardroom to the bathroom, God is with you. Here's our host, author, speaker, teacher, encourager, stewardship coach, and my husband, the man they call Mr. Fortified, Jason Davis.
What's going on, everybody? Jason Davis, a.k.a. Mr. Fortified. We are back on the Fortified Life Podcast with a brand new episode. We are passionate about developing a dependency on Jesus in the marketplace. We have authors, speakers, coaches, all types of people coming on, sharing their faith and business and life principles. And it's no different this week. And I'm very, very excited because, folks, I got to tell you, we'll get into how we met in a little bit. But this is truly a powerful woman of God that we have on today. Before I bring her on, let me introduce her to you. Kristi Nowrouzi is a dedicated advocate for financial literacy, committed to helping people understand their relationship with money and their financial mindset. She boasts a wealth of experience as a credit specialist, financial professional, mortgage loan officer, and branch manager at Geneva Financial. Her unwavering passion for sharing her knowledge and insights has led her to become a published author of the books Finish Financially Free, Identify Your Money Beliefs, and Master Your Money, Live in Abundance, and First Home, Where to Start, and How to Win. Kristi also hosts the popular podcast Credit Coaching by Kristi and regularly creates valuable content on her YouTube channel known as Credit Kristi. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Fortified Life, Kristi Nowrouzi. Kristi.
Happy New Year, Jason. I'm so glad to be here with you. Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of your mission here. This is awesome.
Yes. Happy New Year. We are at the top end of 2024 and so excited to talk about what God is doing in your life and business, Kristi.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, Kristi, let's dive into it because a lot of folks, they're hearing your bio, they're like, man, how does this lady do all of that? She talks about credit. She's a mortgage loan officer, and she's an author. And Kristi, we know we didn't just wake up in 2024 and then all of a sudden here you are. So kind of take us back through your professional journey of how you got to this point and how God graces you to do so many different things in the marketplace.
Thank you, Jason. It's so funny because, nothing happens by happenstance. We think it just, some random thing happens and it isn't at all. So my mom reminded me, probably a decade or two ago, when I was maybe 10 or 12, she said, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to do as a profession? And apparently I said, I want to play Monopoly. And nothing could be, truer than that's exactly what I'm doing. I've been in the real estate and finance world for 22 years. And I have to thank a teacher in high school. Mr. Jones was my on-the-job training teacher. So instead of doing the whole day at high school, I got to get out like right after lunchtime, right? And I would get credit for working. Well, he introduced me to this real estate office who needed an afternoon and Saturday morning receptionist. And what was so amazing is I didn't just answer phones for a real estate office. Like I got to learn the business. I got to see some of the most incredible salespeople do what they do and learn the lingo. And man, at 17 years old, that shaped my life. I got my real estate license right out of high school. But then you know what you need to be a real estate salesperson? You have to have confidence. That's what this 18-year-old was lacking. So I went into property management and I've had a lot of titles since then. I was an assistant to a real estate broker. I was a short sale negotiator about 15 years ago when the global financial crisis happened and it kind of, just toppled over, right? I, instead of being a mortgage loan officer, I shifted into helping people avoid foreclosure by negotiating short sales with their lender. I've been a realtor for a couple of years and combined about 13 years now as a loan officer. So you asked how I do it all. I don't have kids. Y'all that have kids, I don't know how you do it because I barely have enough energy to get through a day. And now you're serving all these other people that rely on you so much, so heavily. But I joke around that I've got all this extra time because I don't have children at home. But yeah, I've been really, really blessed to be in this industry that I think is the most important industry of them all. There's no greater thought or transaction than buying or selling real estate. So it's been a fun ride.
I love it, Kristi. You said two things that I don't want our listeners to miss, and that is the power of mentorship and exposure. In high school, you got by way of a mentor, and this is why, folks, you just never know the impact that people can have. That teacher didn't have to do what they did, but they did, and look at how it's helped influence you for years to come, Kristi. And then exposure. So it's like, okay, you can tell a student something, but the fact that they invited you in and said, hey, here's experience. I feel like, Kristi, we at times, and from an economic standpoint, we kind of get away from that. We used to call it apprenticeship back in the day. We do have internships, but sometimes we get away from it. And you're a living testimony of, hey, if you give a young person a shot, and sometimes we're like, oh, they're 17 or 18. It's like, no, give them the tools, give them the experience. And so if you could just comment on that, because I know everybody doesn't always have that opportunity, but this is even a challenge to those of you listening who are experienced, give a young person a shot. So just talk to us about that. I got chills hearing you say that, Kristi.
Well, I appreciate you highlighting that. That's awesome. Mr. Jones literally changed my life because he took a few moments to see some skill sets in me that he knew would be good in a specific industry. He didn't just plop me into where there was this opportunity like, hey, this company called and they need somebody to answer their phones. No, he hand selected me because he was invested enough in me and engaged enough as far as, talking with me, learning what was important to me, what I actually wanted to, quote unquote, do with my life. I knew I didn't want to be at the pizza shop in the mall that I was working at the time, right? So in that moment, though, not only did he shape my life and help put me on a direction, because I wasn't one of those people that knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. I thought I wanted to be an attorney, and then I worked at a law office, and I thought, oh my gosh, these guys will chew me up and spit me out for dinner. I don't like conflict, and there's no way I could be in a courtroom, right? So anyway, yes, he poured into me, and, that really set me on this path where I seek out really intelligent, amazing people who have made it further in life, whatever that definition is for you, right? My definition of success has certainly changed over the years. 20 years ago, having a house in a certain neighborhood and driving a certain kind of car and having a certain amount of money in the bank was how I defined success. Now my success is defined through the depth of my relationships and the impact I can make in others' lives. And so I find myself chasing out people who desire that same kind of impact. And I put myself in the same rooms. And that's actually how you and I met. So I'd love to hear, if you could share your version of the story. But I seek out people who have, the same objectives, the same goals for impact, especially for kingdom impact. And then I learn from them. You had mentioned my book. In the acknowledgments at the beginning, I actually have an entire paragraph there saying, I want to thank the mentors in my life. Because of you, you've helped shape my thinking, my perspective, open up my mind to things that I wouldn't even have considered before, because, our perspectives are often just created out of where our journey has brought us, our environment, and just what our exposure has been to. And then these people can help other people who are further along in their journey, not necessarily in age, maybe just in impact, can help introduce you to ways that you haven't even thought of before. And being able to be part of that, before this interview, we were talking about some of the people you've had on your show that you and I know in relationship already. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, I love learning from them. She's been an amazing mentor. It's just, it's incredible. It's life-changing, but it's not life-changing just for me. It's life-changing for anybody in my sphere that I get to have impact in their life too. So it's just, it's like a ripple in an ocean. We're not just a drop. We are the ocean, and our ripples can go out so much further than what we think it can.
Wow. My goodness, Kristi, this is exciting. You talked about in Proverbs, it mentions how, iron sharpens iron, and also that there's safety in the multitude of counsel. So for young people to pick up nuggets of wisdom from those who have more experience, whether that's by age or just years in an industry, it's just huge. And I just love in James where the wisdom of God, the wisdom of the world, it's temporal, but the wisdom of God is eternal. We have access to it as believers. And James says, if any man lacks wisdom, let him ask, and God will give it freely without reproach. It's not based on age or gender or how much experience you have or whether or not you got gray hairs. It's just, you're my son, you're my daughter, and you're part of a spiritual family, and ask. And so that's huge, Kristi. Just a challenge for us to mentor that's just so powerful. Now, Kristi, you talked about, you kind of were teasing this a little bit, how we met. So folks, it's a cool story. Andrea Sherwood, who is the president of the C-Suite for Christ Orlando chapter, if you remember back earlier in our episode, she was on. Well, let me tell you how God's providence works and why this lady and I are right here today are talking. Andrea was on the podcast. We developed a good relationship. It just so happened I was speaking at a conference, the Roadmap to Destiny conference. Shout out to Dr. Joy Morgan. I was there to talk about building your profit blueprint. And Andrea had said, hey, Jason, if you're ever in Florida, ever in Orlando, let me know. I said, now, Andrea, to people who live in Georgia, it's not a matter of if we're going to be in Florida, it's just when. And so September came up and she said, Jason, you're going to be in Orlando in September? I said, yes. She said, well, it just so happens our C-Suite for Christ Orlando meetup is also in September. What week is it? I told her the week. She said, well, Jason, we actually need a speaker. If you're okay, would you mind doubling up? And I said, absolutely. Are you kidding me? So I flew in couple days early, got to spend time with the Orlando chapter. And folks, guess who happened to be there? That's right, Kristi Nowrouzi. And now we're on the podcast today. And so just the supernatural providence of God. And now Kristi and I are just having fun, getting excited about what God is doing. So Kristi, I don't know if you have any comments on kind of that story, but when you were talking about how you put yourself in environments and people to learn, and C-Suite for Christ definitely is one of those environments. And it's why I agreed to come and speak. I love the organization, and it's a like-minded, we're all passionate about Christ. And now Kristi's my sister. So
exactly. Introductions like this don't just happen unless you purposefully show up, right? Yeah. And you poured into us and just shared some great wisdom. I took great notes and was changed by it. Got to meet you and bought your book. Guys, it's changing my life by reading all of the stuff that you put in there. It's just absolutely incredible. And the people that you're quoting and the scriptures that you're sharing, it's just, it's great work. So, follower, subscriber of your podcast, and got to hear some amazing interviews that you share. So anyway, that's how we met, and I love it.
I love it, Kristi. Thank you so much for that shout out. The book is there to bless people, and folks, you never know. So those of you, if you've got a book in your heart, and we'll talk about Kristi, her books in a little bit later in the show, but if you've got something in your heart to release, by faith, do it, because you just never know what God is doing in the hearts of other men and women. And Kristi and I are testaments of what happens when you do that, when you dare to write what God has put in your heart. And it doesn't matter the topic, because all gifts and talents come from him. So if it's a little bit more, how to do something versus maybe a why to, that's okay. God gives all of us different things to write, to speak, to coach, whatever it is, whatever industry. So I encourage you. You're looking at two individuals that took a step of faith, and people are being impacted. Now, Kristi, as we switch gears a little bit, you had this crescendo of experience. You've got the mortgage side, and then you've got the credit side. And so you were kind of chronicling your experience for us. So when did you know all of this kind of started to tie together? Like, you know what? It being, especially knowing that you don't have children, but again, you still said, I'm learning all this. I'm experienced. I'm going to do this. So how did you start to, tie this thing together? Like, you know what? I'm going to teach about credit, mortgage loan officer, and then still being able, that whole journey of real estate, I can walk somebody from A to Z. How did you bring all of that together under one umbrella?
Yeah. So, I where do I even start? God really started putting it on my heart to do more publicly. Around 2019, 2020, it was definitely before the pandemic had started taking shape. I work with a lot of first-time home buyers by design. Love it. I love being able to pour into them, be able to expose them to this whole world. They don't even know any of the language or the steps. And it's just such an honor to be able to prepare them, not only financially, but emotionally too. You're not buying a pair of shoes. It's a big, big commitment. And not everybody is ready to buy a home and be a homeowner. Not everybody it should be a homeowner, so we've got to work through that. But it's an even more amazing honor when I get to help somebody that's the first person in their family tree to be a homeowner. It's just extraordinary, because I know we're helping to reshape generations. And speaking of generations, sometimes people have generational beliefs that aren't serving them really well. So I found myself doing a little bit of counseling when I was meeting people, finding out what their beliefs were about money, because so many of us just go through life behaving and showing up with our actions and our habits in a way that was much like what our parents did, or what worked once for us, as a teenager. And so we just keep repeating that, but we're not necessarily getting ahead. And God really started speaking to my heart saying, I'm not giving you this information and experience to keep to yourself. And so I really found like I need to get some information out there on different platforms. And so I started my podcast in February of 2020. I have just a few less than you have. You have over 112 at this time, I think you said, episodes. I've got just under that. But what I found was it doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank. If you're trying to get a mortgage loan, the very best interest rate possible, you've got to have a really great credit profile and a great credit score. Now, that does not mean you have to be in debt. But it does mean you have to show up. You have to have some things out there, and you don't even have to go into debt to create a credit profile. So I started creating these episodes to teach the rules of the game, because how can you win if you don't know the rules of the game? So they're all short, very short episodes. Most of them are 10 to 15 minutes. I don't have any commercials by design. It's just really my ministry. And I also at the same time started a YouTube channel, putting out some information out there about our money beliefs and credit, those kinds of things. And then it really got pressed on my heart in 21 to write a book. It's funny. I keep getting people introduced to me, and the first thing they say is, I want to buy a home, but I don't know where to start. So I literally wrote the title of my first book is called First Home: Where to Start, and then what do we want to do? We want to win, and how to win. So it's from every single step, from considering, am I ready to buy a home, to how to shave your 30-year mortgage down to a 21-year repayment by setting up biweekly payments and paying a little early, a little extra, and really understanding how money works. And so that's just been the most fun of all of this, is being able to teach what I've been able to gain from all of this experience. And at this point in my career, I've seen thousands of credit reports. And so I see habits and attitudes towards money, and I can look at your credit report and really help provide a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is what feels like is off. Is that possible that you might believe, and kind of bring some exposure to that, and maybe peel back some layers of belief systems that aren't serving us well, where we can now create a new relationship with money, one that you're in charge of it, so that you don't find yourself with more month than money. That's a terrible place to be.
Yeah. Wow. Kristi, you made me think about a couple of questions. While we have you, I want people to subscribe to your content, but when it comes to credit, maybe what's something that a lot of people don't consider or think about? We know there's a lot of jargon out there on the internet and a lot of rumors. And like you said, sometimes we get into these patterns where we just repeat my family always did it this way, or this is, no offense to aunties and uncles out there, but Uncle Joe said, this is what you do. So maybe what's maybe one or two hacks, if you want to call them, or things that really aren't considered when it comes to credit?
Yeah, a couple quick things. Your payment history makes up the largest single portion of your credit score algorithm. So if somebody's like, I'll just be a few days late, that really could hurt you. It could cripple your credit score. So if something terrible happens, you get laid off, there's an illness, something happens and it bumps you off the path you're on, communicate with your lenders and your creditors and let them know what you're going through. A lot of times they can set up a forbearance or some kind of a repayment where it won't damage your credit, but ignoring is not really an option. So just please don't do that. Communication is key here, like anything in life. The other thing is a lot of times people will get a credit card and then they go, I should have 10 of these. It's not little gold stars, right? So I am under the belief system. I think everybody should have a credit card, not only for a credit profile, but in the case of an emergency. And when I say emergency, some hotels and rental car places won't accept a debit card, or they'll charge you 3 times that cost, where sometimes people don't carry that kind of a balance in their checking account as a deposit because it's not a credit card. Well, I one time used my debit card at a gas station and they had that scammer thing, right? And so overnight I had $1,500 taken out of my checking account. There was a time in my life I didn't have $15 in my checking account. Right. And I had a fight with my bank literally 2 months. I had to go to 4 different branches and fight with the fraud department over hours to finally get that back. I wouldn't have had to do that if it were on a credit card. So now I put gas, groceries on a credit card, I pay it off. But what a lot of people do as far as a mistake is they'll carry large balances in relationship to their limit. And a really good rule of thumb is keep no more ever than 30% of your limit. So if you have $1,000 limit at any given time, don't put more than $300 on your credit card. So I love just, if you use it, pay it off the next day. You don't need to carry a balance. And a lot of people also don't know you have a grace period, typically 25 days, that if you do repay that balance back in full during that time, you have a 0% interest rate because you're not charged any interest. So if you're waiting until your bill cycle comes and you're paying it, now you're paying that balance with interest. And the average APR on a credit card right now is well into the 20-something%. So let's not do that, right? Let's not pay 25 to 30% more for something if we don't have to, but keep those balances low, not only because why pay interest, but it can also actually hurt your credit score because it's what's called an overutilization of credit.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why they call her Credit Kristi. Did you see how it just rattled? She just rattled it off. And I said, hey, what's just one or two? And she dang near was ready to give a seminar. So listeners, listen, make sure you go back and listen to this episode, but make sure you subscribe to the Credit Kristi podcast. We'll have everything in the show notes, jerichoforce.com/podcast. So don't you worry. We'll have links to all her resources so you can keep up with what she is doing. My goodness, Kristi, you get me excited because as a in the stewardship space, I have these conversations. And so you're causing me to geek out a little bit when I hear different things on different topics. Kristi, coming out of 2023, and I know, again, there's a lot of stuff out there, but because you work on both sides, you see the transactional side and you see the loan side of the house. what are you seeing out there with the housing market, and what are some things that may occur? This is not necessarily about prediction, but
Right.
what are you just seeing coming out of 2023 and going into 2024?
I hope there is a thawing out of this frozen real estate market. Real estate and new construction make up so much of our numbers that really talk about the health of our country, our GDP, and those kinds of things. And it's been a really tough year. If you know somebody in the real estate and finance market, give them a hug, because 2023 was hard. It was a hard one to get through, and it's difficult because owners of homes have a 3 point something interest rate, and buyers of homes are getting offered an 8 point something interest rate. And so it's literally a frozen market, which is difficult because if you think about it, anytime a home is sold and purchased, there's about $4,000 that goes into the local economy in the first 30 days. And that doesn't even include, real estate and finance commissions and incomes and, the movers and the handyman, like going to the store and buying things for their new home. And so that has really kind of come to a reduction comparative to the last many years. I'm hopeful that 2024, as we are dancing our way into this recession, is gentle as a recession, because recessions are good. It's cleansing. Think about a wildfire, right? That forest needs that fire to clean out that brush and the old wood and those kinds of things. And then there can be a time of renewal. And so we actually need that. It's cleansing. It's cyclical. It's actually really behind where we should have been for a recession. And so I hope it's cleansing, but doesn't hurt too many people. I do think that, when it comes to money and finance, since that's my world, there's going to be a lot of people who are hurting. So if you remember back in September, October, the student loans came out of forbearance after 3.5 years, and the average student loan payment is somewhere around $500. Consumer debt is at an all-time high. I read someplace, and I can't really prove it. I've been trying to find some other sources for it, but I am finding old data. But somebody had referenced that a consumer debt is somewhere around $92,000 per household. And I think, when it comes to being good stewards of money, we aren't able to do and accomplish what we want to if we are just simply servicing debt. So we've got high car payments and student loans and credit cards that we feel strangled by it, right? We are now a master to a debt, slave to it. Slave to debt. If that's the case, it's going to be very difficult to continue tithing and supporting the organizations that we really want to, because you have to make a choice of paying these bills or, being consistent with where you want your values and your giving and your attention, your love to go to. So I'm a little fearful for that. I think that this is an opportunity, though, where if you're not in love with what you're doing, there's going to be some new opportunities being born. I think so much opportunity comes out of a recession. So if you're seeing it from that dark place, like, things are tough, my industry's shrinking, my company is downsizing, start really just asking God, what's he got for you? Because I'll tell you what, every time I got bounced off of a road, that hurt for a minute, but I wouldn't change a thing about my journey and my path. So even though it hurts in the moment, we've got to trust that God's got something even better for us. But there may not have been any other way for you to get on that road, but this way. He uses everything, not only for his glory, but for us to be prosperous and for us to use our gifts that he's given us in the manner that is explosive for his people and his kingdom, not just, hey, that was good work.
And Kristi, you just shared those are some golden nuggets right there. And I like the way that you described a recession. It's a cleansing, because unfortunately, a lot of the news outlets, there's so much fear mongering that goes on, and people hold on to every word, and you have, fear on one side, and then on the other side, oh, nothing's going to happen. And the answer is usually somewhere in between. And so I like when you just talk about economic cycles. Hey, this is cyclical. It's getting rid of, maybe the businesses or industries that didn't necessarily do what they needed to do. It's kind of a reset. And so, folks, we can trust God and use wisdom and live by faith, not by fear. And also knowing that, remember, it's about eyeballs, right? People want to get their articles and read, and they want eyeballs. And so fear is a great motivator, but we don't have to be motivated by that. We could be motivated by faith and opportunity. So Kristi, I love the way you put that. Let's talk about your other books. You kind of gave us a backdrop for First Home, Where to Start and How to Win. Let's talk about your other book, Finish Financially
Free. Yeah, I love this book. It just got published in August of last year, and what I love about it, again, it's not me. I was just a good steward with what I know. I've learned so much along my own journey in my way. I was raised poor and broke, and those are two very different things. And we were both. My dad was a pastor. My mom, raising 5 kids. What do you do with 5 kids? You're kind of a stay-at-home mom. So she did bring in more kids through daycare and did what she could. And we were broke growing up. And I learned some things. My father was born in 1935, so he was a product of the Depression, and it wasn't intentional. But what he taught us really through our environment, more is caught than taught. My parents didn't know how to be a master of money, so they couldn't teach it to us. And I learned so much through what they had demonstrated. And they were doing so much good in this world. They would house missionaries as they would travel. They would do things in the community to serve others, because my dad was a pastor. He's a principal of a Christian school. And what I experienced was they were doing so much good in this world, and we were broke. So I didn't realize I had this really deeply underlying story about money, that I could do good in this world or I could make money. But I didn't have an example of being able to have and both. Right. And so I was finding myself, not being able to make it through the month, eating a 1-topping $3.99 Hungry Howie's pizza on Wednesday to get me through to payday on Friday, every meal just to have substance in my belly. And I thought, this is not how to live. And so I really started doing the work. And then a lot of my clients were teaching me a lot of really incredible lessons too. What they were demonstrating on their credit report, their stories of their upbringing. I was raised in all of these apartments. My family moved all the time. I want security. I want safety. And I thought, wow, we really desire these certain things, but yet we are in a trap of what we believe to be true. Yeah. And so I said, we've got to start there. We've got to uncover our beliefs of what we believe to be true, and maybe rewrite that story. And so I got to rewrite my story. When I did, man, my life exploded in just very different ways. Now, all of a sudden, I wasn't just working for a paycheck. Now I could go into a career that really lit me up, where I got to serve people at the level I wanted to. And it wasn't about the money. And to get to that place is really empowering. But God gave you specific gifting, and he put you at a specific place at a very specific time. He taught us in Matthew that we are to multiply our gifts. We're not to just bury it in the backyard. And so it's not just about multiplication. It's not just about multiplication of money. It is also a multiplication of what we can give, contribute, and do in this world. And so we start off in this book really learning and talking about our money beliefs. And then what do we do about it? How do you get into action? You don't make any changes until you get into action. So we've got to create some new habits. We've got to show up a little bit differently. And I truly believe as Christians in the marketplace and in finance, we have got to show up different than everybody else. A couple decades ago, I started talking to you about what my level of success felt like and looked like. Well, I found that my identity was in my job. I really believed at a time in my life that I was only as good as my job title, my, number that I was, and all of the salespeople in the company. Did I rank in the top 5? The money that I made, the car that I drove. You are not the car that you drive, but yet people don't go and buy cars. They go and try to buy a status symbol.
Yeah.
And it's part of identity. Our identity is in Christ. And the second that we can really wrap our minds around what that looks like, all of a sudden the things of this world aren't as important. And when they can take a back burner to who we can be in this world, instead of seeking to be an influencer, seek to be a person of influence. When you can get that kind of shift, when you show up in the marketplace, when you show up as the leader in your home, in your business, in your networking group, with your friends group, all of a sudden that can start pouring into others. But it all starts with our habits, our attitudes, what's showing up in our actions. And so I explain that in the book, and hopefully that has an impact on how we can show up in future, careers and our future decisions. Do I really need this car, or can I keep driving? I'm driving a 2015 because that baby is paid off. And listen, she purrs because she's paid off. But that allows me to support local nonprofits that are doing amazing things in my community. That allows my husband and I to go and reset and rest and have an amazing vacation and dream about what we're going to do in this next new year. It's crazy what can happen when we're not a slave to debt, when we're not a slave to money, and when we can really start expanding what we want for our lives and how we can use that place to impact and influence others. That's what the book is about.
And folks, I don't know about you. If that doesn't make you want to go out and go get a coffee, I don't know what else does. And everything that you just said, Kristi, that will preach. Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, Kristi, where can people get a copy of your books, First Home and Finish Financially Free?
Both of them are available on Amazon. The Finish Financially Free, is also available at Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. I don't know how many of us take time to go and sip a nice cup of coffee and browse a bookstore anymore, so Amazon tends to be the easiest.
Yeah. Folks, you heard directly from the author. You know exactly where to get your copy. And again, we'll have this in the show notes, jerichoforce.com/podcast. Well, Kristi, we've talked about professional background. You've talked about just different turning points in your faith and different things God has shown you throughout your life. Before we close out, Kristi, we're at the top end of 2024. What are you most excited about for this year? When you look out, I know it's only January, but just in your prayer time, and maybe if you do a vision board or different things you do personally and in your business, but what is 2024? What are you expecting God to do?
I'm excited about this year. Every year we have anticipation and excitement, but this one is something very special because I truly believe this is where God's people are going to shine. I truly believe that because it's a presidential year. There's a lot of stuff slurred out there, and there's going to be, it's just going to maybe feel a little yucky. I think this is where we should ensure that we are linking arms with God's people, that we are raising each other up, that we're supporting each other's business, that when things get tough, we're there to be honest and open about it instead of saying, hey, everything's fine. Everything's fine. My husband hates it when I say everything's fine. and when you say it's fine, it isn't. And, turn to your brothers and sisters and say, I need prayer on this. I think there's going to be so much opportunity, but I think opportunity is going to show up or appear differently than what we think. You ever play that game where you're like, look at this picture and count all the things that you can see that's yellow. And then at the end of the 30 seconds or whatever somebody gives you, they're like, okay, how many red things did you see? Well, you weren't looking for red things, right?
Exactly.
I think we've got to really ask God, what is it that you want me to see? Because if I rely on my own sight, I'm going to miss it. And I want to make sure that I don't miss what God has, because I think that we're on the brink of something huge. I think there's going to be new opportunities that are so much bigger, greater, special, and exciting than what we even thought could be possible or what my actions were moving me towards, right? I think that there's going to be more blessing and abundance as opposed to striving and trying. I think that there's going to be an emphasis on Christian businesses and how we can show up differently, blessing others differently, being the light. We hear salt and light, but I think we really need to be really intentional about shaking that salt and shining that light. So I'm most excited about opportunity, but opportunity that I don't even know what it looks like yet, but I'm asking God, expose me to what I need to see that my eyes on my own cannot see, but only because of and through you.
Love it, folks. I believe, along with Kristi, it's going to be a powerful year, and watch what God does. My goodness. Well, Kristi, I could talk to you another 3 hours, but unfortunately we don't have that time now. Offline, we might talk.
There you go.
We actually might. But Kristi, before you go, how can people follow you on social media? How can listeners connect with you? What's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, awesome. It's Credit Kristi. I'm pretty much everywhere on social media, Credit Kristi. So it's Kristi. My goal was that if somebody was typing in Credit Karma, that someday I'll end up underneath Credit Karma and they'll say, well, what's that about? So you'll learn about money and finance rather than opening up a new credit card or looking at your credit score. So Credit Kristi is where you can find me. And I invite you to listen in on my podcast, Credit Coaching by Kristi. It's really on all platforms out there that podcasts can be found. So Jason, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this with you, for being part of your family on this one of your many outlets that you just share all that you are up to. And it's just been an amazing opportunity and blessing. So thank you for being a blessing to me.
Absolutely. Kristi, it just occurred to me. There was something we talked about offline. Listeners, we just hang on a couple more moments because this is powerful. I forgot, Kristi, we need to talk to the significance of your name. And this would be a perfect way to send us off for the show. So for those of you, when you go and you look for Kristi's books, she's got her full name listed, Kristi Nowrouzi. Now, Kristi, I believe when people hear this, I don't think, and it's Holy Spirit does what he wants. This is probably the best way to end the episode because this talks about the significance of names. And when they hear what you're about to share, folks, you won't be surprised Kristi's doing what she's doing. So before we go, Kristi, share what we were talking about because I believe our listeners need to hear it.
I love that. So God has such a great sense of humor and nothing gets lost on me. I tell you that. So my maiden name is Kristi Service. And I got picked on a lot. There were jokes, songs. If you ever want to hear it, call me sometime. I'll tell you some of those jokes. Some kids are mean, right? Kids can be mean. So I got picked on a lot because of my last name. And I couldn't wait to drop it and take on my husband's name. Well, as I got older, I really started learning what my purpose is in life. And my purpose is to be of service. And so when I got married in 2015, I said, I'm not dropping this name. So I dropped my middle name and moved my maiden name, my God-given name, into my middle name. So I am Kristi Nowrouzi. And it's just an honor to be able to share this story because when people say, is service really your name? I get to say, to believers and non-believers, yeah, God has a great sense of humor. Let me just tell you, he knew I was going to be of service, and that's why he placed me in this amazing family with a family name of service. So it's a lot of fun to be able to share that story. And that's why I left it. That's why I put it out there so it could be a talking point.
Folks, if that's not a mic drop, I don't know what else is. There's literally nothing further to add out. But Kristi, I thought about it. I said, wait a minute, we can't end the show without talking about that because that is significant. And she is of service even till this day, folks. My God. Kristi, thank you for hanging out with us here on the Fortified Life Podcast. My goodness.
Thank you, Jason. Such an honor, truly.
Folks, that's all we have time for. You know how we end things. Don't compartmentalize your faith in the marketplace. And from the boardroom to the bathroom, God is with you. We'll see you next time on the Fortified Life Podcast. Remember, show notes can be accessed at jerichoforce.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Fortified Life Podcast. You can catch us live on Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time and on demand. Check out FortifiedLifePodcast.com for more details. To learn how to live out your faith in the marketplace, grab a copy of Jason Davis's book, Fortified, Being Rooted in God's Plan for Work and Business, available on Amazon.
You're listening to Gears Live Worldwide Podcast.